Welcome to Open Source Sustainability. I'm Alex Lassiter, CEO of GreenPlaces. This month we have a special edition for Earth Day. We've got a compilation of some leaders in different types of businesses coming at you to learn more about how they approach sustainability inside their different industries. We've got a tech executive from public company Yext. We've got the leader and founder of Hodinkee, the largest e-commerce platform for watches in the world. We've got a sustainability leader at an independent private school. And we have a leader from a restaurant chain describing how they think about stepping into sustainability and how they prioritize progress over perfection. First, we're going to hear from Ben Clymer, the CEO and founder of Hodinkee, the world's largest e-commerce platform for watches. We're going to talk to Ben a little bit about a company that he just purchased to be able to bring a secondary market for your favorite watches. We'll also dive into a review of more green offerings in the watch industry, including sustainable watch bands, alternative components, fair gold mining, and a number of other things that some of your favorite watch brands are doing to be able to make watches a more sustainable industry, and how even luxury retailers have found a way to be able to green their offerings. So maybe talk to me first about how does sustainability fit in with Hodinkee's mission? What do you think broadly about this, and maybe talk to me about y'all's place in the world of sustainability today?
Yeah, I think two things worth kind of mentioning. First is like the definition of luxury is literally something you don't need, right? Like it's something beyond your base necessity. So you would think that, like, as you said, that like the idea of something in luxury that is sustainable is kind of like, it's an oxymoron. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But when you look at, and I think to some degree that is an accurate thought. And I think that's a sound kind of directional thought. When you look at fashion, when you look at cars, right? I mean, like, looking at a brand new electric Porsche or an electric Tesla today, these cars cost whatever. And like, these batteries will have to go somewhere. And like, these cars will not be on the road in 50 years. Like, we know that definitively. When you look at shoes, clothes, whatever, those will not be around in 50 years. You can't, I mean, I guess you could wear your grandfather's sweater or whatever from the 50s, but it would be difficult to maintain it for sure. Meanwhile, you look at watches and jewelry, and I really view watches as a separate category from jewelry for my own reasons, but I know a lot of people kind of group them together. You're looking at, in fact, the most sustainable, the most long-lasting physical items that anybody can buy. And these are luxury in the sense that, of course you don't need them to survive, and nobody would ever say that you do, and I would be the first among them. But these are luxury items that actually have incredible longevity and incredible respect for the environment. And these are things made out of, effectively raw materials that are shaped in many cases by hand. Up until the 80s, they were shaped by hand. Before CNCs, before CAD, etc. These things were genuinely shaped by hand. So it would be kind of silly to say that these are luxury in the sense that, like, these are items that are short lasting, and these items are things that will be kind of turned around quickly and kind of thrown into a garbage dump, and then you have to kind of go into the world to kind of recreate. I've got a watch on my desk that is from 1963, and by the way, like, it still works, and this is not a plant, this is just sitting here, but this watch is 60 years old, and I think that's pretty remarkable that, like, this thing is still around today. And so the idea of mechanical watches and items like this are really inherently sustainable in a way that I don't think many people understand. Then you come into the idea of actual, like, premeditated sustainability within our own company and within some of our partner companies. You have things like Fairmine Gold, which is like are actually predetermined and pre-designed to premeditated to be sustainable. And so you have recycled gold. Chopard, which is a partner brand of ours, we're an authorized dealer of theirs, sells products and creates products out of Fairmine Gold. And they were amongst the first to do that. Within Hodinkee, like, sustainability has always just been kind of core to what we do. And like, it wasn't like we set out to be a sustainable company. We just set out to be a world-class company. We wanted to be a company that treated our employees, our partner brands, and the environment and the world in which we live with the utmost respect. And I think we've done that. And that goes back as far as probably 2016. We began looking at the way that watches and straps and everything sold in kind of like luxury goods were packaged. And what you would see is you'd see a watch that's about 39 millimeters in diameter, which is like the size of your thumb or two thumbs maybe, being packaged in what appeared to be like a briefcase. Really like let's say 3 foot by 2 foot rectangle with leather and and steel and cushioning and all these like kind of crazy facets, etc. And that just made no sense. It also, like, as a watch collector, which you wouldn't be surprised to learn I am, what do you do with all this stuff? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I was living in Manhattan at the time in a tiny little apartment, and I really had no room. I had to get storage units to put boxes for watches in, and I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. So when we became an authorized dealer for watches in 2017, we actually went out and created our own packaging that was completely sustainable. We actually were the first people to do that. We actually asked the partner brands if we could not include their packaging. Some of them said yes, some of them said no. But to even ask that was kind of like, it was completely crazy. I mean, it was a totally foreign idea that, like, people were okay with getting less when you were paying, say, five, six, or more $1,000 for a watch. And it turns out that a lot of people really wanted that for 1,000 reasons. I mean, one of the reasons, A, is storage. Like, what am I going to do with it? But beyond that, we saw, and it really kind of escalated or became much more kind of a thing during COVID. You saw younger people buying watches, mechanical watches. And with that, you have people that are just more cognizant of sustainability and the environment. And so, again, the idea of, delivering a 39 millimeter watch in a packaging that probably weighs 40 pounds and is made of stuff that, like, we'll never use again, was almost offensive, to a lot of people's kind of intellect and a lot of people's kind of ethical viewpoint towards what sustainability should be and what luxury should be, right? I mean, if you have the air quotes luxury of being able to afford these things, you should be respectful about it. Like, you shouldn't take advantage of any situation. And so we were the first and remain certainly probably the largest proponent of sustainability within the watch category. Several brands have followed suit now, and now you'll see small and big brands selling watches in something like this. I'm holding up my iPhone, but effectively imagine a little leather case like this that folds over on itself, and you can fit a watch in there. So we were among the first to do that, and I think definitely set kind of a standard there. But everything we do is really to be mindful of the world around us.
Next, I sat down with Neal Booker, head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Yext. We talked a little bit about what Yext is doing to meet their sustainability goals, and also how they're working with their partners at Google to make sustainable choices easier for consumers looking for new ways to be able to interact with the businesses that they shop from. Are you able to share any more details on that, of like maybe some examples of what sustainability might look like to somebody who's maybe looking for their next hotel to stay in? Do you have any examples of what that might look like?
For sure. That's a great question. In real time, just really understanding how the relatively complex nature of the work that Yext does applies in the real world space. So to your point, if you're thinking about searching for a hotel to stay in New York City, perhaps, and you're considering a number of factors and environmentalism is of the utmost importance to you, a simple search based on this company's viability and how forthcoming they are with their sustainable practices and the benefits therein, this may be something that simply pops up in a simple search for them. So you can see the type of products that they source, if they are sustainability focused, and a number of other environmental causes that they may be involved in, simply by utilizing the Yext feature and ensuring that this information is at the forefront in terms of their listing. And again, we try to make it as easy as possible for our customers to be able to utilize the platform. As you were talking, I was thinking about the difficulty around sustainability and, again, the very complex nature and the conversation and how very nuanced each of the companies are. So again, making it as frictionless as possible is of the utmost importance. So something as simple as utilizing a couple of fields to be able to implement or insert this data, as simple as a click of a button here or there. And if that is something that is of the utmost importance to folks like you and I, and that's going to be a determining factor as to whether or not you stay at this particular hotel or utilize this particular company, I would suggest company utilizing that type of platform.
That's amazing. It's funny, like, as you're talking through this, I'm thinking in my head a little bit of like, kind of like the evolution of search. The first version of search that I remember was the yellow pages, which my high suspicion is most people listening to this podcast aren't going to know exactly what that is. But that was my first search. And Obviously, as you've moved on to online and search engines, you're looking into things like location, like how close is this to me? You might look into opening hours. You might look into menus. I remember when menus were added into search and you were able to see what somebody would have. You could look at prices. Then you could look at reviews, and reviews started to make their way into it. And this is like another evolution of that that's really exciting because it gives consumers more information about what they do. Does that mean that consumers will only go shop at places that are sustainable? No. It just means that people get choices. And for the history of time, humans have wanted more information about what we purchase and where we purchase it. And I love that Yext is taking this a step further to say, we're going to give you more information to make a decision on the places that you go and the businesses that you frequent. And we're going to help empower the businesses that want to be able to be a part of this change to share that in ways that are honest and transparent. That's amazing. We had a podcast that we recorded last episode with a fast food chain called PDQ. And the interesting thing, and I'll tie this back, but it
Sure.
reminds me a little bit of what you're doing here, is he said, for a business like ours, we've been nervous about taking steps into sustainability because we knew that we couldn't be perfect. We were afraid that because we weren't able to dedicate the resources that maybe, a Starbucks or a Whole Foods might, that we can't do this. And we were afraid of taking a step because it wasn't going to be at that level of perfection that we so often kind of want to be at. And he said, this decade for us and where we want to sort of fit into this is to basically show that progress is more important than perfection. It's about taking steps. It's about working your way into this. And what excited him about the process that they're working through, which is pretty similar to where Yext is in terms of taking the steps of understanding their emissions, because you can't reduce what you can't measure. He said what gets him excited about is the education aspect. We can learn about our footprint. We can learn about our emissions. With that learning, we can help to educate our customers, our employees. We can be smarter about it. And what Yext to me is doing is another continuation of that, because now you're educating customers, you're educating people, you're educating companies, you're giving them the ability to take those first steps without the fear of not doing it perfectly. And to me, that's just a great way to partner with folks. I think that's amazing. I really think that when y'all look back in 10 years from now, these are going to be the defining things that helps make this mainstream and makes it available to people who otherwise would have been afraid of taking that step. Now they can.
Absolutely. What's really important from a personal perspective is just being able to have that visibility and knowing that this information is available. And now it may be something, even if it's not at the forefront, that's going to be a consideration as I make decisions moving forward. In a recent study, Google actually conducted, 82% of consumers reported sustainability as a top priority.
Wow.
When making purchases.
82%? That's
82%.
remarkable.
Right. So customers are becoming increasingly eco-conscious, right? And that's reflected by the trending search with search terms like recycling, climate change, and sustainability. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for this shift in consumer preferences. So even if someone isn't necessarily making that purchasing decision based on that information explicitly, again, as I tie that back to my personal journey, it's something that I'm now considering when purchasing said item. And it's going to be the same, moving forward into the future, as companies need to ensure that they have some level of accountability as it relates to sustainable practices and waste reduction in general.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Now let's learn from Tina Bessias, the sustainability coordinator at Durham Academy, who's training the next generation of climate champions. While it may seem that corporations are behind and still getting up to speed on saving our planet, students at this North Carolina school have made it part of their everyday mission to prioritize sustainability. I was thrilled to learn just how much can be accomplished when you have a whole group of students behind a cause. Not only was it fun to engage with students on developing a carbon footprint, but I continue to be inspired by the passion that these students bring to the environmental movement.
In terms of students and what you're really asking here, they have really driven so much of this. And just from the beginning, it's been a really positive, upbeat group. And it's turned over multiple times, but that tone has remained. And there's just such a sense of excitement about really doing real things. I think students, and I work most closely with the high school students, and they have lots of opportunities for competitions of various, in debate and athletics and robotics, and lots of things. Almost everything that is not sustainability has an aspect of pretend about it. You get a trophy for something, and that's great, or you're debating something, but you're not actually changing a law. You're debating other high schoolers and seeing who, in a sense, who has the most potential to change laws in the future if they go into politics or policy work. In the Sustainability Committee, we have the joy, the excitement of making actual concrete change that is now. And that is, I think, really energizing for students. So like when they were going out and gathering data, in the fall semester and handing it over to GreenPlaces, our partners at GreenPlaces and all, they were really participating in the process that is changing Durham Academy. So their energy and their willingness to do things, and we've done dumpster dives. We get out and get dirty, and we gathering paper towels from bathrooms, doing a rather long pilot project to change over from putting all our paper towels in the trash to putting them all in compost. Involved students every week emptying the receptacles, twice a week, emptying the receptacles and taking care of things until we could hand it over to housekeeping, get a process in place. And, this big event that we did recently, this Sustain-In, was, really a student creation. We were in class and starting to think ahead about, okay, how are we going to take this GreenPlaces report of our greenhouse gas emissions and get to the point of the school making commitments to change things. And we're not in a position to buy a lot of offsets. We are going to have to actually do change in order to bring our carbon emissions down. And we talked about it and said, well, the more we engage people in the process of developing strategies and that sort of thing, the more willing they'll be to support those strategies and the better strategies we'll come up with. If we have a lot of different perspectives on it. So, and then they get to this point where we're sort of spitballing ideas in class, and it's like, okay, we can stay all night and we can work on this, and make a big event and bring in everybody and all that. I'm going, and that's when I'm starting to go, oh, really?
Well, that's amazing. I hear this sense of optimism from these students. I mean, that's to me is so exciting. I'm hearing. I mean, you could see it from I think from your reactions on it, but it's just such this level of excitement and optimism about the future that a lot of times you hear is almost more of people are just so doom and gloom and we're never going to make it. It sounds like the students at Durham Academy view this as just a great opportunity to do something. And I think that just sounds so exciting.
It is. We do have our dark moments. I do teach about climate change, and I think it's important. They're old enough to know the facts, and it's scary. We have our scary moments, and we talk about that, and we talk about hope, and how do you maintain it in the face of really steep odds? The outlook is certainly very scary if we don't do anything, and so it becomes a matter of choosing the optimistic path and saying, well, it is going to be maybe the hardest thing that's ever been done by humanity to change the course we're on and to meet these targets of 2030 and 2050 that the IPCC has set. But let's get going. I mean, it's always comes down to we can sit in the corner and cry, or we can get busy and demand change, be willing to change ourselves and be willing to really ask it of leadership and demand it because the circumstances require it. I mean, if it's an emergency, we do something. And so I do survey all the ninth graders every year, and I do find a high degree of worry about climate change. About 2/3 of our student body is at a 4 or a 5 out of 5 level of worry and fear about the future and as climate change impacts it. But we all feel better when we're working on things, and we have a lot of fun. And we are very conscious about making sure we include the fun and acknowledge the daunting realities, but then don't, move forward. We have a lot of support from our administration. The students have been invited to speak to the administrative team every year since we started this, and to the Board of Trustees a couple of times. And that's rare and something that we all appreciate greatly and hope to really make the most of it.
It's amazing. 4 out of 5 is a lot. While Durham Academy is pioneering the crossroads between education and sustainability, businesses like PDQ and other food service brands have their own set of unique challenges when it comes to what they're doing for the planet. PDQ's Jeffrey Camus offered us a glimpse into balancing brand standards with operational improvements to be able to green this restaurant chain. For our listeners, obviously, we've had a couple podcasts that have talked a little bit about the challenges of sustainability in food service, but you've got everything from the suppliers and packaging. You've got the in-dining experience. You've got the to-go experience. You've got the buildings themselves with both natural gas, electricity, water consumption. You've got the food, where it all comes from, how it gets to our properties. You've got the commitment to quality, to making sure that the things that we produce are done so in a way that's obviously meets our brand standards, but is also to the level of quality that you'd expect at a PDQ. And then, as you alluded to earlier, you've got the people. So how do we get to and from each location? How does corporate potentially get out on a plane back and forth to locations to be able to help and support? There's a lot here. I mean, it's an absolutely enormous tent of data that you have to be able to sift through and understand to be able to make good decisions. So I understand that completely.
And it goes back to brand values, right? So you want to make sure, and you said it way better than I could have ever said it, is brands, obviously we have a mission, we have a brand value, and you want to stick to that. So balancing all those things is definitely a challenge. And again, luckily you guys have done it for so long, you don't understand how to do it, but you have to be able to do that, because you have to make sure that you're not sacrificing the things that you've promised to your guests, your team members, all those things. And that's where, that would be probably the other thing I'd add from your comments too, is that, making sure that you can balance all those things while knowing that, what the right thing to do is. So then it's how does that balance with those things to not impact you from a brand perspective, or the things that you are doing that are so important to who you are and what you've developed from that standpoint as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because ultimately you've got, I don't know how many employees are at PDQ, but there's a lot of people that get fed every day because of this company. There's families that you have to think about. There's employees' futures. There's investors in the business, and all of that type of stuff has to work all in concert with each other. And that's what makes some of this stuff so difficult, because it's like weighing different things as you start to figure out the better way to operate. It doesn't mean stopping to operate. It means operating differently and smarter. And I think ultimately we're all trying to do that in different ways. It's so inspiring to be able to work with businesses from all different types of industries to understand how they have incorporated sustainability into their values and their operations in the hopes of creating a business that's in balance with the planet. I feel lucky for the opportunity to sit down with them and walk behind the scenes to learn a little bit more about the unique challenges that each one of these businesses are facing. And I'm inspired about where we're headed from here, to be able to learn more about how they envision a future where businesses and the planet can coincide in a more peaceful way. Thanks for listening. If you want to dive deeper into the sustainable strategies of these companies we talked with today, be sure to follow the show so you don't miss the full interviews that will be released in the coming months. And if you like this show, please be sure to leave a review. This podcast is powered by GreenPlaces. If you're looking to reduce your company's environmental impact and reach your sustainability goals, visit greenplaces.com to learn more. Happy Earth Day. I'm Alex Lassiter, and I'll talk with you next time on Open Source Sustainability.